Welcome to the Embody Your Design podcast. I am your host, Amy May, 6'3" emotional manifesting generator. I am obsessed with human design and mindset tools and using them to create a life beyond my wildest dreams. My goal with this podcast is to bring you human design and share stories around how you too can begin to embody your human design. What is talked about in this podcast are the thoughts and opinions of me and my guests. I'm always welcome to feedback should you have any. Thank you for being here, and let's dive in as we embody our human design, one conversation at a time. All right, guys, I am so excited to have Lauren here with me on the podcast today. She is a 3-5 emotional manifesting generator, and we connected through the Alpha Femme group, from Melanie and Layer. I'm so excited to have her here just to talk about human design and all the things. So, Lauren, do you want to introduce yourself for the listeners and tell them a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy. So I am Lauren, as you stated, and I'm a 3-5 manifesting generator with an emotional authority, which I'm sure we'll talk about those pretty intense waves. And I mean, as with anything, my story has a lot of layers, but I'll try to give like a short, oh my gosh, what's the word? Synopsis. There we go. Right. Yeah. So I stepped into the coaching space actually when I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter, who is now 3. And prior to that, I dabbled in like network marketing and health coaching and fitness and things of that nature. And when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, I really saw the trajectory of my life going in another way. I was actually in training to be a flight attendant, and 4 weeks into training, I took a positive pregnancy test. So my world kind of got shooken up, and I found myself not only like really sick in pregnancy, but like really sad and somewhat depressed and just, trying to figure out like where my life is going to go. So I actually read Gabby Bernstein's The Universe Has Your Back, and I had somewhat like dabbled into spirituality and my manifestation journey, but I like had this really big tug at my heart to start like coaching women in spirituality and manifestation. And then I had my daughter, and I had a birth out of hospital, which is like a whole other experience around like surrender and trust and connecting to your body. And the first few years of motherhood were pretty wild. There was a lot of ups, a lot of downs. And I started exploring with different modalities. So I got Reiki attuned, became a Reiki master. And then I like dove really deep into somatic work and body-based healing and understanding how, and this is so much of like the sacral, right? Like understanding how, and like so much of human design, but like understanding how the body like leads our intuition and leads us in making decisions. But I wanted to understand like why I felt so disconnected from my body, and even heal like some of my trauma and generational traumas. I have a daughter, so there's like a huge awakening that happens, I think, like for mothers who birth like girls their first time around. Not saying like birthing a boy is better or not better. It's just like it's a different energy that you step into and space you step into. So I started healing my own trauma, and I got trained in somatic therapy. And that's like what I do now. I mean, I always like, I'm thinking about all of the women that I've served up until this point. And I will say that the biggest thing that I think I get to give to them is a safe space and permission, and this beautiful ability for them to connect to their yonis and their wombs and their sexuality. And all of that like really creates their authentic truth and permission to be who they are. So my journey into human design, we'll get into the human design, was actually about, I think I first found it in 2019. So I was about 6 or 7 months postpartum, and like the manifestation wasn't working for me. So I actually found human design through Lacey Phillips. And I was like binge watching her YouTube videos. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So she had just like Jenna Zoe on, and I was hooked. So from like 2019, I mean, I had to do a lot of the unsexy work, and it was like a lot of shadow work and inner child healing. But I feel like now, um, I live like I really do live my human design both in like my personal life and how I mother, and also in business, which is really beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I love that. So like
Thank you.
so much. Yeah, and I've started to do like a little bit of like somatic work like through some
Mm.
workshops, and it is like so important, and I never really realized this. But that connection to our bodies, just like for me it's been about like releasing the emotions, and especially when I'm in an emotional wave, I'm also an emotional manifesting generator, like just being able to have that tool to like, okay, let me like rage dance to this song, like to just like get that like anger out, like it's and if it weren't for people like teaching like somatic work or running like somatic embodiment workshops, like I wouldn't have known that, and I would
Yeah.
have just been, I used to like say hateful things to people like when I was in anger, or like and maybe not directly to their face, but like kind of get like angry and like gossip and like all these like unhealthy like not
Yeah.
not so nice things, but having like a tool, and like the work that you do, like learning these tools like is really helpful to be able to express these things that we have within us in like a healthy way. So I love that.
Yeah. Just to like speak to this, I mean, I had gone like so deep into, I mean, I came from network marketing, which really pushes like personal development and mindset work. And there's almost like this unhealthy, like, think positive, like just like think positive. And what I realized and what I was experiencing and why I stepped into somatics, I was like, I'm fucking angry. Like I feel deep levels of anger, and like if there's moms listening, I'm sure you can relate. Like mom rage is real and it deserves to be seen and expressed. And obviously, we can't express that onto our babies. So can we create a safe space where we can rage dance and we can, get a pillow? I did it actually just like a few days ago. There was no specific reason. I think it was like last Thursday, but I was like, I felt so much like stuck energy in my body. And I was, somewhat in like an emotional low, but I was just, I don't know, I just felt like stuck, and I felt like sad, and I felt anger. And I did like a sacred rage practice, and I shared it on my Instagram stories. I tend to be really vulnerable with my audience, because it's one thing to share like the pleasure and the sexuality, and then it's a whole other thing to share like the grief and the sadness and the rage. And I just got a pillow, and I was like screaming and shaking and like getting my pillow and hitting it against the bed, and like it doesn't make like logical sense, but it's like, ooh, something just released. And I can't like pinpoint this story, because I think so often like we want to, especially with trauma healing, um, in like traditional methods of healing trauma, it's like, oh, let's figure out what the story is. And it's like, well, the story matters to an extent, but like the emotional imprints that's left in your body is really what matters. So that could have been rage from my mother. That could have been rage from her mother, from her mother, from her mother. Like that was generational, like lineages worth of, maybe women being suppressed, or women not being able to speak, or women not being able to express their truth or their desires or their power, and like all of these things. So the somatics takes us out of the mind, out of the logical, and it gives us the experience to be like this wild, and I do a lot of work in the divine feminine, but this wild, feminine, like fully embodied woman, which I believe we all are if we, connect more to like that divine feminine essence. Like we all have that within us. So it's really beautiful, and I'm celebrating you for stepping into those workshops and those spaces, because man, is it uncomfortable.
Yes, yeah. And what I realized is that it really does all connect with, what I've learned with human design. Especially we talk we'll talk like a little bit about authority, but like the core like premise with like human design authority is that our minds are not the authority. It's always our body. And so
Yeah.
all of these like tools that we can use to deepen our connection with our bodies, it all like it all comes together. It's all in alignment, and it really just like for me, it deepened my connection with my human design. Did you find that well, did you learn about like the somatics first, or like human design?
I remember so vividly Jenna Zoe saying on like a podcast interview, or maybe one of her trainings, she said, she said something like, we never make, I think there's one authority, right, that is of the minds. I think it's like maybe the self-projected. I could be wrong, but maybe there's none. So there's maybe one or none.
But so technically, like it's the
Yeah.
sounding board, but you're not. It's because those are people who have like the head area defined and nothing else defined. But even with that, it's not
Yeah.
about using your mind to make a decision. It's about
Mm.
speaking and tuning into your body and how your voice
Yeah.
feels in your body. So, yeah.
Yeah. So still the body.
Yes, yes.
So anyway, she had said that, and I hadn't yet dove into, like, I was still very much in like the mindset and like how can I shift my like subconscious, which I think is really important too. But even like what I teach now is like the subconscious lives in the body too. Like the body remembers, and the body tells the mind essentially like how to think and what to believe and all of these things. So yeah, that was like my first kind of like pathway in, was her saying none of the authorities are in the mind, everything's in the body. And then a few months later, when I was ready for it, I started diving deep into the somatics. um, and even then, like it was still, and I think this speaks to like my 3-5 line, like it was still a lot of like kind of like dipping my toe in, I would say, and then like stepping out of bed and like leaning in and like letting myself, like I failed so much in my business. Like I wrote a post about 2021, and although a lot of beautiful things happened, like I embodied failure. And I know so many people are going to be like, well, that's awful. And also, like, I had to experience so many of the things that I had to experience last year so that I can step into the space of being like such a leader and being so embodied in my purpose and in my mission. And like it's really interesting because I've been chatting with a few other girlfriends in the online space, and they're like, you just seem like so clear and grounded. I'm like, yeah, for the first time in my life, like I'm not hustling to get clients, and I'm not like stressed, and I have my offers that feel really good and aligned. And clients are just like I just received a, $1,400 payment out of nowhere. And it's just like, oh yeah, this is what it means. This is what I've been cultivating in my body. And it's not because I'm doing more. It's because every little step, every little action, every little redirection, I just reassess and then I teach on it. I share it. I'm like very open and vulnerable with my audience of like, I tried that, it didn't work, right? Like I've done launches and no one signed up, or one person signed up, or hosting master classes, and it's like me and my like clients, like my ride or die clients in the room, and that's it, right? And it's just, I never make it mean something about me. I just let it show me and guide me, and I redirect and realign as needed. That's more of like, I love my profile. Like being a 3-5 is probably my favorite thing in the world. And I think it's that, like my whole life has been that, where I've had to go a little bit slow, and I've had to try things and fail at things, and then just see like what works and what doesn't.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And, there with the manifesting like generator type, sometimes there's this like idea, oh, we move fast. Oh, we move fast. Oh, we quantum leap. And I'm also a manifesting generator. And that's why I say we. And it's like, that 3 line, which I'm a 6-3. And so,
Okay, cool.
it's like, no, there's this like, we need, or I feel this urge, like it's like, I want to try this. I want to see what this what the experience of it is like before I move forward. And so sometimes that does, like, it does slow down a little bit. It's more of like a process. But I like to think of it not necessarily as failure, but like, it's an experiment, and it's not a failure, but it's a lesson. And yeah, and it's like, it's really beautiful just to see how you embody like your 3 line, a part of the 3-5, and the leadership that you show by being like transparent with your audience and sharing like, oh, this worked, this didn't. Okay, let's move on from there. Like, what are, like, when you learned about like your human design, I know you mentioned that you had a reading in 2021. Like, what are some things that were illuminated for you, like in that reading that you had?
So I think like the biggest thing, which is funny because I had shared with you, like I had a podcast, that podcast no longer felt good. So I stopped podcasting for like 7 months. And in between that, I was like, ooh, there's a new podcast like wanting to be birthed. And I think prior to that reading, I would have birthed it because I thought I should, right? I would be like, oh, there's the hit. But it hasn't felt like a sacral yes yet. Like it feels like intuitively, it feels like it's going to be a yes in Q2. I have some big projects coming up in Q1. And like Q2, it's just like coming alive. Like Q2, it's going to be birth. It's going to be out there. Like I have the name, everything. I have everything, but it's not ready yet. And I keep like just trusting myself and my body to know that when the sacral yes comes, because even as like an emotional authority, I'm sure as you know, like even as an emotional authority, there's still the sacral yes that will come on, like that And when the comes, I feel like I'll just know, where prior I was like, oh, I got the download and the hit and like the ping, I got to take action on it right now. And like, that's usually when I would get tripped up. So that was like one big permission slip that I was granted of like, trust yourself enough to wait. Trust yourself enough to like really wait for that. It's ready. It's ready to go. And I do that with all my programs now. And any launches that I do, like right now, it doesn't feel good to launch. So I'm not launching. I have offers in the background and I like trust. When I post, I trust, and I lean into that. And then I think, what else did you say? I'm trying to think. That was like the big aha. Or like the big moment of like, okay, that totally makes sense. And then for the most part, it was like, I think because of the somatics, like I was already living my human design. Like when I had gotten Reiki attuned, and this might be going off. So I went from being really deep into like shifting my mindset and the mindset work to getting Reiki attuned and wanting to like access my psychic gifts and wanting to like read energy and do energy work, which I think is really beautiful, and connecting into like the quantum field and working in the Akashics. And I did all that. Like I got those certifications too. And I'm really gifted at that. But when there's almost like this level of resistance of, well, it's still safer to be in the mind, right? Because the third eye lives in the mind. Our psychic gifts tend to get access in the mind. And I see this a lot with my clients of like, it's just still safer to be in the mind, like just be in the mind. And when I connected to my body, like I let it lead every step of the way, whether it be in mothering and relationships with girlfriends, in business, like I think that reading was just like, you're meant to be in the body, and through the body you will have these emotional waves, and in the body you will have moments of I need rest, and it's okay, and you need to like lean back and slow down and go inward, and then there's going to be a rev. And when the rev comes and you like start to like no, you're going to go down again. And it's not like a down as in a negative thing, but it's like the energy's going to drop and then it'll start again. So I think that was like another piece of like really honoring the cycles and just like honoring like my own seasons. Like right now, I would say I feel like I took a few weeks offline. And maybe this is like permission for someone, but I was feeling so called to take time offline in December leading into the new year. And I mean, a lot of people do it. Like a lot of coaches will take time offline. So there was an aspect of, am I doing it because everyone else is doing it? Or am I doing it because like my soul is guiding? And I kept tuning into my body, into my womb and my sacral. And I was just like, nope, my body, like, like take time offline and trust that you'll be supported. Cause I had like this deep fear that I had to hold myself in of like, what if it all goes away? Like, what if you take time off and like everything gets washed away? And I came back and I had consults booked while I was gone from being on social media and working my business. I took no client sessions and I came back. And that first day of working, I booked 2 private clients, one for a 9-month container and a 6-month container, both high-level coaching packages. And it was just like such a reflection of like, this is what happens. This is the magic that occurs when you just like trust yourself and lean into what the body is telling you. What is she whispering to you? And it's interesting because I still feel like I'm in the season of winter. Like I'm definitely still somewhat in hibernation. I just like, when I feel inspired, I'll go online. And when I decide to come off, I like come off and I like just trust. I just trust. And like, and before it felt like so much pressure. I have an open head and like the ajna and the mind center. I think that's right. And that can create a lot of pressure for me of like, am I doing enough? Is this okay? Like what, and I'm constantly like pulling in at times from other people. So there's this very intentional, I think it helps like tapping into the body of just like emptying it all out. Like what is mine, and what is theirs, and trusting that.
Yes. So that's so important. And I'm so glad you shared that story about like actually giving yourself that permission to like take time off and to really like trust, just to trust in your body and trust the messages your body is giving you, because we get to play in these energies, and we get to trust that we're going to be like taken care of, that things are working out for our highest good, and it's not necessarily always going to make sense. I'm curious, like with emotional authorities, like just in my own experience and from communicating with like working with clients and everything, this is just one of the more like trickier things to like play around with. Like how do you work with your emotional wave, like when it comes to like decision making, living your life, like being in your business? Like how do you work with your emotional wave?
I give myself space. I mean, I think like what most human design teachers and readers will say is like 24 to 72 hours.
Yeah.
I'll just, I just had it where like I was talking to someone and I had like a vision of the price point in my head, and I was like, and she asked me, she was very upfront. She's like, it's for a project I'm working on, and she's kind of a freelancer. And she basically said, she's like, can you share with me right now? And I was just like, no, I'll send you an email. I need to feel into it more. And like, I do that very often. Like, I am very much like, I need to sit on this. Like, I need to process this. I need to feel into it, because I do, like, I notice like if I respond to people too quickly, and like I'm in a high, like I usually start to get resentful for whatever reason. Or if I'm in low, like I can feel like, oh, I don't want to, and then it can change. So I just give myself like so much grace and permission. I also kind of have noticed, and I don't know if this is just like me, but my waves tend to flow pretty in sync with my cycle. So like I always know, like during luteal, I never really make decisions.
Yeah.
Right before my bleed, I'm just like, I can wait until either I'm like through my bleed or like in the midway point of my bleed. So again, like I trust my body to tell me like when it's okay to respond. And I have such firm boundaries now and such clear communication that I just say, hey, I'm just going to give it a moment and then I'll respond. And for the most part, like I've never been met, and maybe it's the line of work that I do that everyone knows like the languaging, but so I'm like super grateful. But I think it's just like, I mean, people respect that. And a lot of it has to do with the way that I present it to people. Like I'm very anchored in that. Like I need time to sit with this and then I will get back to you.
Yeah, and I think, and also it's the awareness of it too. Like for a while, like even when I learned about my emotional authority and my emotional wave, I would always forget about like the excited, because I always equated like, oh, if it feels good, then it's aligned. But it is like, even when you're on fire and it's like, oh yeah yeah yeah, I want this, waiting, that be like, no, I'm still gonna wait 24 hours, because most of the time, like 90% of the time, I wake up the next day and be like, wait, why did I do that? Like, I
Yeah.
don't want it anymore.
Yeah. And
I
it's
made a
always
mistake.
harder. Yeah. And it's always harder to like backtrack that. Like it's always harder to go back on your word. So it's just like, just honor like what it is that you're needing in these moments, you know? And even if it feels like yes, like I've had experiences where I'm like, oh my God, fuck yes. Like I still will give myself time
Mm-hmm.
because I know that there is a slim chance until I just like am with it, be with it, can see it, taste it, feel it, then I respond. Cause it is a little bit harder to, have to like message someone or email someone and be like, oh, just kidding, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And when I'm having like sales conversations in the DMs with people, it's like I always ask like, okay, what's your authority? Okay, here's how I can guide you a little bit, and also just um I also make it easier for people to backtrack. Like if they say yes, but then like they don't necessarily like click the payment link, I'm like, okay, I'm giving you space. Like
Yeah.
if you back out of it, like it's no harm done. Like I totally understand. Like you were like didn't properly wait with the emotional wave, but I'm also like I'm not your mom, or like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, kind of a thing. Be like, remember to wait 24 hours before making a decision. Like, I don't do that as a coach, but I'm here to like guide people and be like, oh, here's like, feel into this, see how this feels in your body, see how like you experience it, and then make the most aligned decision there. Like, it's it's definitely like being like, for me, like being a human design coach, like guiding people into how they can integrate in their design, and also giving themselves permission to like maybe like make a wrong decision and like back out of it, like giving themselves like the permission to learn how to trust in themselves and their decision making, like, is so important to me.
Yeah, there's such like a level of like grace and compassion to like when you're learning this stuff and like really embodying it of um like you might have to back out, like you might have to cancel plans, right? Something that once felt good might not feel good in that moment, and that's okay too. Because you always find more power when you anchor into what your truth is in that moment, and then just to like speak to it, like as coaches in general, it's really not our responsibility to caretake our clients. Like, it's our responsibility to hold space as they step into their power. And one thing that I see in this is like such an aspect of like trauma informed sales is like, it tends to benefit people for them to not make a decision right away. Like, because, and I'm just going to speak to sales in general, but like money within itself is a trauma for most people. So like giving them that space and letting them be on their own process and in their own journey of like, okay, I see you in this. Like, yeah, making an investment is so scary. It is really scary for you to commit to yourself and your growth and your evolution. Like, that is terrifying. And I'm sure, I can almost guarantee, like, you've never seen someone do that before. So celebrating you, and also like, I'm here for you when you're ready, you know. I think it's something that's like shifting a lot in the coaching space, where we're like getting out of like, give me your credit card on the call, you know. And it's like, no, like, let, like, whether it be your authority or just like whatever you need, so that it can be a safe transaction, so that it can be like calm and soothing on your nervous system, you know, so you're not making any transaction and then going into like fight or flight mode, right? Where you're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? No, how am I going to pay my bills? Like, I always desire my clients to just like, yes, there's a level of like, ooh, I'm entering a new threshold, and there's that, and also feel the safety, feel the support, like, you got yourself, I got you. And like, this has to, like, your bills have to be paid first. Like, please make sure that you're supported and then work with me, you know? So that's like my tangent, just because I see it a lot in the coaching space. And I also work with so many women who have experienced like the trauma of that. And I've had it too, where like, I've been on sales calls with other coaches, and they're like, don't talk to your partner, just give me your credit card. And I'm like, our finances are combined. Like, what do you mean? This is like a $12,000 investment. And it can create like so much instability in the body. And if you have this instability in the body, like, you will never be able to trust your authority, right? Like, you won't know what an is or what an is. It'll be very like wishy-washy. So, yeah, a little like side tangent, but maybe it speaks to you or speaks to someone listening.
No, it's an important conversation to have, and you know, because I'm aware of, I like, I have 8 out of 9 centers defined. I only have an undefined root, and so I personally just hate doing sales calls, so I just don't do them. But I do have like hold conversations like in the DMs, and I always like, I tell people like, you know, if you're new, if you don't know the voice of your own body, like, don't make a decision around me. Like, if you have questions, I'm here to answer any questions, but I like guide I guide people that I talk to, like, do not make a decision around me, because I have a lot of defined energy, and if I'm communicating with somebody who has a lot of like undefined or open energy, like, they could be picking up on my energy and not even realizing it. And so it's like, no, like, go like, separate yourself, like, be in your own like energy for a little bit, like, talk to who you need to talk to, like, about the decision, but like I really, I want them to come into my space like feeling incredibly safe and like ready to do the work, or ready to like understand their human design on a deeper level. And that's just a really big like core value of mine, and how I've set up my sales process so that there isn't even really like this like chance of like people like getting too influenced by my energy, and creating that safety. And like, definitely 100%, like, anytime you're on a sales call, like, have that conversation with your partner if you have a partner. Make sure that you're able to pay your bills, or you're not taking unless if it's like a completely aligned decision, like not taking out credit cards or loans or anything like that, because like you have to be ready to do the work in order to like truly expand, to be able to like pay those investments off.
Yeah, we never want to like step into an investment or like a coaching space where we're like in the space of a trauma response, right? Of like fight or flight or freeze. Like we want, I think it's really empowering when people do make a decision, right? And whether that be having a conversation with a partner, just having a conversation with self, or connecting to your body, or just letting the like emotions ride through, like that's all so like it's not a bad thing. I actually find that so much more empowering than someone that's like, okay, here's my credit card. It's just like, oh, this is an empowered space and I'm ready to show up. I'm ready to do the work, because especially like with the somatics, it's the trauma tends to get stirred back up when we start to go into the body. So there has to be like this level of safety and anchoring that gets to be created. So yeah, it's all really beautiful. And I love that you give the people that you serve like that permission as well. And you're really in tune with your own body and like what's coming through for you, and like almost not so much like passing the torch, but like showing people what's possible, that way when they do come in for like a human design reading or for coaching with you, they're like, yeah, Amy, this feels so good. I'm so ready. Like, yes, it was kind of a threshold. I feel a little nervous and giddy, but I know I'm meant to be here, and I trust you, and I trust myself, and it's not a codependent relationship. I feel anchored in my truth, and I know you feel anchored in yours, and now we get to co-create together, and it's like such a different energy, right? Like, yeah, I love it.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely like a very important energy to be in. And you mentioned like the trauma responses, like if you're entering any sort of like place where you're wanting to learn, you're wanting to expand, and you're holding this like huge fear around, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay my bills? Oh my gosh, like how am I going to pay this credit card off? And all these thoughts, like it's going to hinder you from expanding. And so just giving yourself that permission to feel like have like a like that foundation of like you got your food, you got your shelter, you got water, whatever, all like that foundation taken care of, and then let's then moving into like the expansive parts. So I'm so glad this came up, because I just think it's a conversation that needs to be said a lot more than what is like talked about in the coaching space. So
yeah, I love it.
Yes. So I always ask this to the people I have on, but if you like, for someone who's like maybe newer to human design, they've like looked at their chart and they're like, what does all this mean? Where do I go from here? Like, what do you have like one like recommendation or a tip for somebody who's newer to human design on where to go next?
Probably book a session with a reader. Amy, I'll say you.
Yeah.
Whoever feels aligned to you, like book a session so that that's easier. Like I went like 2 years, like just kind of trying to figure out human design by myself. Oops, sorry, moving energy. Every time I move energy, I yawn. So it's never never a bad thing. So book a session as soon as you can and it feels supportive and good for you. I listen to a lot of human design podcasts. So there's yours, and then I really love Align by Design, and I get a lot of like permission from watching the way they run their business, Liz and Amy. And then with the 3 line, I started following Jazz Moon. She was actually recommended to me, and although she doesn't teach human design, she has a 3 line and she's an MG, and her way of doing business like gave me so much permission. So I really appreciate that. So I would say like find people that are expanders to you and have similarities in like your profile and in your authority and things like that. And just like, don't move like them, but witness the way that they move, witness the way that they show up, and notice like what's triggering about it, and also noticing like what feels really good about it, and just see what happens from there.
Oh, I love that. I love that, like the idea of like finding people who have maybe like a similar parts within you, like your human design, and following them and seeing how they live their lives. Like people listening, like if you're listening to this, you likely listen to other episodes, but they're like that's the whole point of like this podcast is to connect with people who maybe have like similar designs to you. So, if you're not sure, oh, any listeners, if you're not sure like who would be like similar, like my DMs are always open, like on my Instagram or on my Facebook. Like please connect with me, and I believe my email's in the show notes. Like if you're like, hey, like I'm looking for a recommendation, like who would be like someone good to follow, like an expander. Like I love connecting people, even though I'm not a 4-line. I'm not that, I don't know. There's something about me. I just love connecting people with other people, and helping them find like expanders or the right person. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. I love it. And yeah, and I love Aligned by Design also. They're really great. They're really great over there. I've gone through like some of their free masterclasses, and I've been following them and their journey, and it's so incredible. Like they're expanders for me. So I love it. I love that you mentioned them. Yeah. And the last question I always ask is like, if people are like, ooh, I'm interested in like what you do, Lauren, like how can people get like connected with you?
So I like to hang out on Instagram. My handle is at laurenmegan.co, MEGAN.co. My website is www.laurenmegan.com, and you can find all of my offerings. I have a beautiful priestess initiation mystery school that really is like the feminine embodied. It's a 6-month initiation program called the Academy of Femme Alchemy. And then I also run not free, but I run monthly embodiment practices. So guided embodiment practices called Alchemy Flows. And yeah, go to Instagram because that's usually like where I'm sharing all the juiciness. Yeah, I would say just go to Instagram, my website, and you can find it all. Really easy. I keep it simple. There is a podcast being birthed, which I think we talked about before we hit record. Just go to the Instagram and see if it's live, because I don't want to share the name just yet because it's good.
Yeah. Of course not. And yeah, and you know, if the podcast is live by the time this airs for anyone listening, the details will be in the show notes for you guys. I'm definitely excited. You've got me intrigued with this podcast. Like, I'm excited for it. But thank you so much again for being on here and doing this interview. Like, this conversation was so beautiful and so enlightening, and I just want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it.
Okay, you guys, if you have not heard about Anchor by Spotify, it is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything that you need all in one place. This is what I use to create my podcast, and I don't know about you, but I love things that are free, and I have tried other places to make podcasts, and just Anchor makes it so easy because it has the tools to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And you can distribute your podcast on all these different listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. And especially me as a PC user, it's easier for me I love Spotify. I'm obsessed with it, but it's easier for me to use like something that isn't just Apple product based. And it's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And it's totally free. So you can download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Want to dive even deeper? I invite you to get your Human Design Abundance Blueprint. In this blueprint, you will receive a personalized breakdown of your Human Design chart and how to use it to be your most abundant self. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. As a special thank you, you can send your screenshot of the review to theamymae@gmail.com and my team will send you a little gift. All the details are in the show notes. I invite you to tag me on Instagram at the_HD_librarian with your favorite part of this episode. Thanks again for listening and see you in the next episode.